Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Target Postgraduate Fair here in Birmingham 2014. I'm speaking this afternoon about making the most of your time at law school, and I know we've got people in the audience here who are currently studying law, so what I'm going to say will be of specific relevance to you. You have a set of slides which we'll be following. I thought I'd start with that rather arresting figure, 97,500. Now, I know not everyone who comes into law is motivated by money, but that is the starting salary that they're offering newly qualified solicitors at law firms in London. Now, if you think about it, if you're going to be paying somebody £97,500 a year in order to come and work for you, you're going to be expecting a lot for your money. And what I want to do this afternoon is to help us think through the question of how you develop yourself as much as possible in order to make yourself attractive for future employers, whether it is within the legal world or indeed within the general commercial field. Now, I wanted to make this point that becoming a lawyer is not easy. It is going to require you to get a grip on the law in a number of different fields. Now, you're already doing that for your double LBs, but when you come on to qualify as a professional, you will have to make sure not only that you've got sound foundations in the law that you already know, but you will also have to develop extra legal knowledge and extra skills, and that is going to take time, effort, and sustained commitment. Taking on one of these courses is not something that you can do lightly. It's a full-time job. It is demanding. You'll be sitting up late into the night reading the papers. By all means, please come in. Hello, welcome. You'll be sitting up late into the night reading the papers, preparing for your class the next day, thinking things through, trying to look at things in terms of how you would deal with a case that had come across your desk, how you would advise the client in this case. And the other point that I want to make is that, to an extent, going onto a professional course is rather like going onto stage school. Nobody can guarantee you a job at the end of it, and you need to be realistic about what you think your prospects are. It is a very competitive field. So, how do you qualify as a solicitor or a barrister? Well, if you haven't already done so, you would do a law degree conversion. So you either have a good law degree, or you do what is called the GDL, the Graduate Diploma in Law, and that gives you an opportunity to take your first degree and to convert it. You would be looking at acquiring the core subjects that you yourselves will have looked at on the double LB. And you can do that either full-time or part-time. Secondly, you would get an opportunity to complete a training contract if you wanted to go on to become a solicitor. Now, the larger firms tend to pay for their prospective employees to do the LPC, but they tend to recruit 1 year or 2 years in advance. So if that's the sort of thing that you're looking for, you need to be checking the websites and making sure that you know when the promotion round closes. And that is a 2-year work-based learning area for you to work in. You would move from different seats within the organisation, would be given exposure to different types of law, with the idea being that by the time you finish that training contract, you would have acquired sufficient extra practical knowledge to build on the vocational education that you've had and the academic education that you have had. And then once you're qualified, of course, you're let loose on the public. And you would very much notice the difference in what was expected from you as a trainee solicitor to what would be expected of you as a qualified solicitor sat there on the other side of a desk advising a client. I'd like to move on to thinking about becoming a barrister. Now, it's absolutely critical that you get, if you're thinking of going to the bar, that you get as good a first degree as you can. There is no point in trying to qualify as a barrister if you have got an indifferent first degree, because the number of people applying for pupillage is vast, and you need to make sure therefore that you're going into it with a good law degree or a good non-law degree, and then having done the conversion course. You then have to do the bar professional training course, and that can be run over 1 year's full-time or 2 years part-time. That is an extraordinarily intense course. If you're training to become a solicitor, you will look at business law, you will look at land law, and you will look at litigation. If you're training to be a barrister, the focus is much, much narrower. You will be looking at civil litigation and criminal litigation. All that you do will funnel in towards helping you to become a good courtroom advocate. Having done the bar professional training course, you'll be called to the bar, and then you will complete a pupillage. And as I've said before, getting a pupillage is an intensely competitive thing. So if you are thinking about applying for a pupillage, you need to be looking at specific chambers that you think that you might be interested in and working from there. So, not that I want to put you off, but just to say that this is a serious investment of your time and money, and is not one that you should undertake lightly. Be clear that you're going to be investing in developing the skills and knowledge that you need, and you therefore want to make sure that you're going to get the best possible training that you can for your money. Now obviously I would say this, but we would like to say that Cardiff Law School is somewhere that you should be thinking about as your first choice. Now there are a number of things I think you need to be thinking about. When you're thinking about a professional course, you want to be thinking about the stature of the teaching institution that you go to. There are a number of universities, some of which offer all sorts of different degrees. There are other universities which are focused on law. You want to look at how long a history the university has in teaching law, its experience in teaching the professional programs, and that's really important because obviously you're going onto this program because you want to develop as a professional. And critically, its ability to help you grow. Now I'm sure if you reflect on your progress during your time at university, you will look back and see how much you have learnt, how much you have grown, hopefully how more confident you have become, certainly how much more law you know now than you did when you started. The next phase, you're going to be acquiring much more information at a much faster speed, and you will therefore grow more quickly. Now, what would you get at Cardiff? Well, Cardiff Law School is ranked 7th amongst UK law schools and is the only Russell Group university to offer the graduate diploma in law, the legal practice course and the bar professional training course. And we have a long history of welcoming people from England, from Wales and from all over the world. Our students come from all over the place. Now, every applicant applying for the job that you want or the post that you want will have good academic qualifications. They will have completed the LPC or the BPTC and will have done well on that. So what is going to make your application different? And that is the thrust of which I want to talk about this afternoon. So you want to make sure that by the end of your professional training, you have a really strong foundation and the technical background that you need to acquire. You need to look at the professional aspect of your training as acquiring the technical skills that you will need to do the day job. This will set you up well for practice. So, let's just think about becoming a professional. What sort of new skills are you going to acquire? Well, I've divided them as follows. The skills of writing, well, you'd like to think that you can write already, I would hope, but hopefully by the time you've finished your professional education, you will write better. The skill of speaking, the more you practice, the better you get at it. The more you rehearse, the more you improve. The crafting of arguments. Now, you're already doing some of this in the degrees that you are doing, but the way that practical lawyers work is different to the way that academic lawyers work. So whereas before, from an academic perspective, you might want to look all the way around the problem, from the perspective of a practicing lawyer, client comes in with a problem, your only interest is in solving that problem as quickly and efficiently as you can. So the crafting of arguments is part of the process of learning to think like a practicing lawyer. And then finally, you've got to be able to work in a team. Now, you have probably done some teamwork on your degree. You will be doing a lot more teamwork if you go on to a professional training course. A lot of the study will be done in group work at tables, not so much chalk and talk, but you will actually have to sit down, be prepared to discuss things, put forward your own proposals as to what will solve the client's problem, and be prepared to defend that position. So, what can you do to improve your skills in these areas? And I've just set out some things that I think you might want to think about. What I would say is this. Obviously, you're going to have to do this on top of everything else that you are already doing. So it means that you have to be selective. I would much rather you walked away this afternoon having thought, right, well, there's one extra thing that I can do that can add some value to my skills as a lawyer and can add some value to my CV, rather than thinking, oh, well, I've got to go out and do all these things, and then actually you don't succeed in doing any of them. So I think you need to look at something that you look at and think, yes, I could do that, and then work on that. So, for example, writing, you need to read as widely as you can. It matters to be able to pick up newspapers and novels as well as non-fiction. You need to think about learning to write in different types of documents. At the moment, you're probably doing a lot of writing in terms of essays and perhaps dissertations. For legal documents, you may well be writing much shorter documents in terms of letters and that sort of thing, or more technical documents where the document is designed to do things and you need to make sure that you have covered all of the bases. If we're looking at public speaking, what can you do to improve? Well, your university will offer mooting competitions, and if you haven't already been in for them, then you should have a go. Even if you go out in the first round, you will have learnt a lot because you'll be given a legal problem to solve. You won't be asked to stand up and give a law lecture. You will be asked to address a mock court and to speak to that court in technical language and talk about the case before you with a view to solving the problem. It might be that your university offers interviewing competitions. We certainly do in Cardiff. There are negotiation competitions that you could go in for. And you can see that all of those are different types of competitions that you could get involved in. So you might look at it and think, oh, well, actually, I think I'd be really good at interviewing, and that's the thing that you try and develop that particular skill. Or at a more general level, you could get involved in debating societies. I was talking about crafting arguments and learning to think like a practicing lawyer. Again, mooting is something that will do. Both mooting and debating will force you to think on your feet and be able to answer questions that the audience may put to you and help you to learn to speak in adverse circumstances, because you won't always be speaking in the most ideal circumstances. There's another thing that you can do, which is to see your current seminar work, where you may be the one who sits quietly in the corner and doesn't answer questions, or is afraid to answer questions for fear of appearing a fool, just to say, right, I'm going to participate more in my current seminars. You go in better prepared, you go in prepared to air your views, and I'm a great believer actually in making mistakes. You run the argument, if it doesn't work, well that's fine. You've learned something about how arguments run. It's not wasted. Teamwork. Well, I would hope all of you in some way are involved in some sort of student society. I would encourage you to do that, but you also want to see whether there are some sort of areas of interest for you where you could participate in a team event. Now that could be sports, but it doesn't have to be sports. But you want to be looking for opportunities to get involved in events where you can show, I have worked in a team, whether it is leading a team or working within a team, and both of those are valuable skills. So, you need to acquire experience. This is really important. So, what can you do? Well, it's possible that your university will offer law clinics. Now, this is a terrific opportunity to get involved in meeting real people and helping them to solve real problems using your legal knowledge, even though you are not yet legally qualified. There's also the question of work placements, and if you're thinking about going into law, I would encourage you as early as possible to start applying for work placements. That is really important. There are things like local law fairs, where the local law firms will come along with a view to hopefully meeting people who might go on to become employees. You need to make sure that when you make contact with prospective employers, whether it is face-to-face or in writing, emails, that sort of thing, that your contact is as professional as possible. Remember, first impressions count. You really want to turn up to whatever meeting it is looking smart, looking intelligent, looking as if you're interested, not looking as if, oh well, I've only come because I feel I have to. Likewise, when you are writing to employers, I know this myself, it is so easy. Email is so instant, isn't it? You type your email, you press the send button, and then you get around to thinking, oh well, should I spell check it? When you're making applications, when you're writing to prospective employers, you want to print the draft email out first, sit down, I know it's boring, but proofread it, and then you can send it. Because the easiest thing for an employer when faced with 500 applications is to weed out ones that have got spelling mistakes in, ones that aren't well thought through. You might decide that you're going to acquire experience through getting involved in external volunteer bodies. All of these are different ways of acquiring not only legal experience but also life experience, and that is really important, so that you come to the job as somebody with some knowledge and experience. Now, I've just put here a few examples of the sorts of different things that we do in Cardiff. We have a number of different clinics. So, for example, there's a big argument about the extent to which councils should be contributing to the cost of people being looked after in nursing homes, so on and so forth, and we have a clinic that helps people deal with the legal problems that arise from that. We have something called the Innocence Project, and many universities have that. That is an opportunity, if you're interested in criminal work, to work on the cases of people who say that they have suffered from a miscarriage of justice. And I can say that Cardiff has just been the first university in the UK to have a case referred to the Court of Appeal. Having spent a long time working on it, the Commission has thought that that was worthwhile putting it forward for the Court of Appeal to have a look at. We're involved with the Welsh Rugby Union, where we actually are involved in giving legal advice to clubs. And then we have Cerebra and the HAFL Appropriate Adult Training. So, for example, I have students who are on the panel for HAFL, and if there is somebody who has been arrested and is to be questioned in a police station, and they need an appropriate adult to be there for them, then HAFL will call one of our students and they will go out and help. It's a very responsible job. So those are all things that can be done, and doubtless your university will offer a similar range of things. Can I talk to you now, please, about encouraging you to understand your world? Now, I don't know whether you are interested in current affairs. You may find it a real turn-off. I don't know whether you're interested in the world of business. You may find it a real turn-off. But you need to open your eyes and you need to start absorbing information about how the world works. Because when you go for interview, any switched-on employer is going to want you to know a little bit more than just what you learnt from the textbooks. All right, now this is really important. People talk about commercial awareness, and I will show you what that means. There's nothing magic to it. It's something that you can do. You can acquire the knowledge, but you need to be aware of how we're going to do this. So what have we got? We have a number of different ways of acquiring information. Now, because I'm really boring, I will watch Sky News at 7. And Sky News at 7 has a business correspondent who fronts it. And the whole slant, the whole angle of the news is from a business orientation. And sometimes, watching Sky News at 7, you would think you were watching a completely different world, because the stories that Sky at 7 think are important are commercial stories. They're not the stories that normally you would get on the BBC, necessarily. Also, if you can bear it, Newsnight often will flag up leading business stories several weeks before they will appear elsewhere. So that is a useful thing. You don't need to be watching these things every night, but you do need to be dipping into them on a regular basis to make sure that you've started to get a feel for things. Another source of information, again, if you can cope with it, is the Today programme on Radio 4 in the morning. That at the very least will give you some idea of what the hot political topics are and the sort of debates that go on. So that if you're asked a question in interview, you will have something intelligent to say. I would also encourage you to read the print media. You need to read a broadsheet on a regular basis. It is quite likely that your university library has got them. But you need to be making sure that you're reading the business pages of a broadsheet at least once a week, ideally more. And equally, if you haven't got a student subscription to The Economist, then probably somebody you know has, and you need to be reading that, because again, that will give you a grounding in the sorts of issues that businesses are facing. Finally, I would encourage you to make sure that you are keeping up with your reading, in terms of reading books that are written by business figures or journalists. For example, when the credit crunch was at its height, Robert Peston published a book. It was an interesting book. It was worth reading, and you were getting far more from that than you would have got from what he was saying on the 6 o'clock news, where he only had 5 minutes. Okay, so the point is that by looking at these things, you're giving yourself the time that you need to pick up on information and build your own model, your own understanding of how the world works. So, it all starts, I think, with you putting the effort in. My own view is it isn't wasted effort. If you are sufficiently interested in developing your own knowledge base so that you can talk intelligently about the world around you, so that a prospective employer can see that you have already demonstrated some level of commitment in terms of acquiring knowledge about society around you, business, so on and so forth, what will happen is the employer will then see that you have increased your knowledge. And I think that I would be more confident in a candidate who was sat there and had showed that they were already acquiring knowledge about the sort of world that they want to work in. And obviously there you have somebody who already has the good academics. You then have somebody who has a good qualification from the professional courses, somebody who has acquired some sort of practical experience which can demonstrate that you're the sort of person who could do the job well, and then finally you've got that extra sheen of wider world knowledge. And if you put all those together, I would argue that you're looking at the ideal candidate. So, what can you do? Where do you go from here? Well, I'm going to suggest that you think about a number of different things. I don't think you can do them all, but I think perhaps you might think, well, there's one thing that I can take away from here that I can do and that will help. First of all, please update your CV if you haven't already done so. Check it for spelling and grammatical errors. It's so easily done, but if there's an error there, it just gives somebody an excuse to put your CV to one side. Okay, so that is really important. For many employers, that is going to be the first contact that they have with you. First impressions count. You might, if you have, for example, undergone a particular experience, write up a reflective log. This was what I was thinking beforehand. This is what I was thinking as I went through it. Now, looking back on the experience, this is what I have learnt. And can you see, if you do that, when somebody then in an interview asks you about your experience, you have already gone through that thinking process. You don't want to be undergoing that thinking process in the interview itself. I really think it would be worth your while going to the library and getting out books about typical interview questions that you can be asked. Some of them are unanswerable, deliberately so, and you need to arm yourself with the confidence, right, well, I know what this sort of question is really digging out. They're just pushing me to see what response they can get. I would suggest that if you want to build up your commercial awareness, you should think, right, well, actually, I'm going to develop an interest perhaps just in one area. Because there's no point going in for an interview and saying, oh, I know a lot of commercial awareness, and not then being able to talk intelligently about anything. So I would be inclined to think you could say, right, I have developed an interest in one particular sector, and that's the knowledge that I'm going to build. Then finally, you might want to have a personal development plan. Now, this works for some people, and it doesn't for others. But have some idea, right, over the next year, this is what I am going to do in order to build up my skills set. And so there we are. I wish you well. I would encourage you to think of one thing that you can take away that 2 years down the line you can look back on and think, I'm glad that was on my CV, or I'm glad that I did that because that actually has made me more attractive to an employer. So that closes the talk. Thanks very much.